All right, what's up, guys? Kevin from Fish Stripes here. We have Adrian Lorenzo, the International Scouting Director, Senior Scouting Director. So, Adrian, how are you? And thank you for coming on.
I'm great. How are you, man? I'm glad. I'm excited about this. This is cool. Yeah, good.
All right, so the first question is, the minor leagues as a whole, from low A to all the way to Triple A. What have been your thoughts so far this season? Any players that have stood out to you?
Yeah, quite a few actually. Obviously, Yuri Perez that's the low-hanging fruit. That's the obvious one. But even for somebody as good as he's been, he's surpassed expectations even for the high expectations that were set for him this year. I mean, he's dominating Double A at 19.1 years old. And all the reports that come back are reports about being some of the best young pitcher, best 19-year-old we've ever seen, things like that. So obviously that's the highlight. But there's a lot. There's a lot of good stories. Peyton Burdick's having a really good year in AAA. Lewin Diaz is having a strong year in AAA. JJ Bleday is starting to pick it up lately. Obviously you've seen Edward Cabrera here. Brax Gerred, who you're going to see today, has been doing really well. He's going to hit the velos ticked up. So I think a lot of those guys are in a really good place. And then you kind of scale it down to the lower levels. Cody Morissette's having a nice year in High A. Dax Fulton, he had a little rough outing the night before, or 2 nights ago, but before that had been really good. A lot of interesting surprises. George Soriano came up to AAA and had a really good relief outing the other day. We could talk about this list for a long time, but scaling it down to the lower levels, Ian Lewis has come back. He got to A-ball a little later than everybody, but he's come on strong. Jose Salas had a good start. He slowed down a little bit. Khalil Watson had a really good start and is it's taken a step back, but all the components are there for him to continue to progress and be top level prospect. I don't know. You put me on the spot. There's a lot of guys I could talk about right now, but those guys are the ones that have been standing out more so than most. And then there's reliever performances: Andrew Nardi, Josh Simpson, Robert Garcia. We've had a lot of interesting performances from guys that weren't the top 15 guys before the season, but have kind of put themselves in a position to be considered. So, pretty strong year overall for the Marlins farm system, I think.
I want to ask you about Gerred Carrion, someone who started in Double A, had injury concerns in the past two seasons. What have been your thoughts on him? He's just smashing balls at this point in Triple A.
Yeah, Gerard is an interesting case because he's been on the 40-man roster for a little while now, but his whole timeline got interrupted, right? He had always been a performer all the way through high A ball, and then the COVID season hit, and then he was just at the extended spring training at the alternate site, and then got hurt last year multiple times, including COVID, I believe, at one point. So his 2021 year was kind of fractured and stop and start. So he kind of got lost in the shuffle of all the other guys that we had. But this year I got multiple scouts that came back reporting that he was the best player they had seen at that Double A level in that league all year, and the performance backs that up. And now it's good to see him in Triple A. Got off to a little bit of a slow start, but I think everything's trending in the right direction with him. And he's, the bat stands out, but what keeps coming back is the defensive reports, the reports on the arm, how good of a base runner he is. So Gerred Carrion, to me, it's not unexpected, but it's a guy that kind of got lost a little bit in the shuffle of 2020 and 2021. But it's good to see him put himself back on the map. And he's already on the 40-man roster, so anything can happen at that point.
Yeah. Being the International Scouting Director, you guys signed a good amount of guys.
Yeah, we did.
If you want to talk to us about some of those guys, starting with Joffrey Solano, who was one of the top guys in that international scouting pool. So, just him and the other guys that you've signed throughout this period of 2022.
Yeah, so this one for the Marlins is a little bit unique because this is the first time in the Marlins history we're going to have 2 DSL teams.
Yep.
That's what we start Monday. The season starts Monday, and we'll have 2 teams. So we had to sign a higher volume of players to accommodate all those roster spots and fill those rosters. So we, in the 2021 period, which is the one we're still in, we've signed 62 players, which I'm pretty sure it breaks a Marlins record by a long ways. But that was to support a 2-team structure, and there's a lot of really interesting prospects in that group. You mentioned Joffrey Solano. Joffrey Solano's dealt with a little bit of the injury bug in the spring training, so he's been slowly progressing back, but a really interesting, twitchy middle infield type with a really interesting hit tool, and just very hitterish from both sides of the plate. I'm excited about him, but I'm also excited about a lot of other guys. Joffrey gets the notoriety because he got the highest bonus, but there's a lot of guys in that group that are really interesting. I think you're going to hear a lot about Anthony Peguero. I think you're going to hear a lot about Jose Gerardo. I think you're going to hear a lot about guys like Jesus Hernandez, Darwin Rodriguez, Santiago Suarez, Julio Mendez. I think our pitching that's not to take anything away from our position player group, but I think we had a really strong year collecting pitching at those lower levels and have continued to do so. So really excited about that group as a whole. Yeah.
You guys scout pretty much all around the world. Yep. What are some spots that you may want to go to a little more and find some talent there?
Yeah, so the majority of our operation centers around the Dominican and Venezuela, almost more the Dominican than anything. It's just our academy's there, our hub is there, we have more scouts there. So that's like the hub, but Venezuela is kind of, the country where we spend the second most amount of time. But to your question, where are places that I want to continue to spend more outside of those two? We've kind of planted a flag in the Bahamas. I think you'll see over the course of the next year and a half more and more players come in from the Bahamas. Just in this signing period alone, obviously we have Jazz and we have Ian Lewis and Andre Arthur and Stephen Adderley. But this year, Sharif Nemore and Toby Simmons are guys that I think you're going to hear quite a bit about in the DSL. Especially, Sharif Nemore is probably going to play a lot of shortstop for us in the DSL, and he's a really, really interesting up the middle athlete with big upside, big projection. And then in the coming years, I think we'll continue to scout that market pretty heavily, and then start to dive in a little further into the markets that I think are really interesting. Curaçao is a particularly interesting market. The Curaçao, Aruba. Colombia, we spent a lot of time in Colombia scouting mostly Venezuelan players, but we have a couple Colombian players. Mexico is really interesting for pitching, not only pitching, but I think that's a really interesting pitching market in particular because they have a development league, right? Kind of like we do on this side. Like they have minor league teams, and these kids, they're able to get a lot of game experience pitching in these big leagues and big stadiums. So when they come to the professional level, they're a little more polished than some of the other countries in Latin America. So it's an interesting market. Brazil, I plan to get to Brazil at some point in the next few months. I spent a lot of time in Brazil actually when I was with the Red Sox. I'm trying to think of other markets that might be Panama. I got one of our top evaluators is going to Nicaragua this week to go see some Cuban pitchers. So anywhere baseball is being played in Latin America, you can rest assured we have a presence and we have somebody taking a look at it.
Before we get to the actual team this season, FCL season and the 2 DSL seasons coming up, what are some players that we should keep an eye out for that season coming up?
For this season coming up here, I think I would say Ronald Hernandez in the FCL is one that stands out. The switch hitting catcher from Maracay, Venezuela. He's shown a lot of promise here. Yiri Capé is obviously a big dollar signing that has really, really high upside. But down to the DSL level, a lot of the guys that I just mentioned to you, I don't want to slight anybody, but I'm not going to be able to list all the guys I'm excited about. But like I said, Anthony Figueroa, Jose Gerardo really stand out. Sharif Nemore, Darwin Rodriguez, Santiago Suarez, John Cabral, Juan de la Cruz, Roosevelt Trinidad, Luis Cesar. That list is long. I don't want to shortchange anybody. I hope nobody gets insulted by not being included in that list. But it's quite a long list of guys that I'm excited about how they're going to perform in their first year on the pro side. And I think we're gonna have 2 really competitive DSL clubs. Yeah, I'm excited.
And the final question: the 2022 Miami Marlins. What have been your thoughts on that team so far?
On the Major League Marlins. Obviously you want your record to reflect better than what it does at the current moment. But I think there's a lot of things to be happy about and excited about. I feel like all the components. I mean, take last night out because last night's going to skew some of those numbers. But just a week ago, we had the 12th ranked offense, the 9th ranked overall pitching, 3rd best overall defense. So a lot of the components are there for the record to reflect a more positive record. But sometimes that's just life in the big leagues, right? Like you lose a lot of those close games, but we win half of those 1-run games that we've been talking about. We're having a different conversation, and those could have been possible. You've watched all the games. There's a lot of times where one pitch, one swing, and it's a different ball game. And like I said, that's just life in the big league sometimes. But I think we're grinding through it. We're not even 40% of the way through the year. A lot of the underlying numbers are strong, and I think you pointed out a lot of guys that are going to continue to help us throughout the course of the year. So I think our roster is very deep as well. We've had more depth than we've had in a few years, and you're not seeing huge drop-offs in the guys that come up and have replacements, and we're due for some positive regression from injuries. Brian Anderson, Joey Wendell, and John Birdie's here now, but those were all injuries that came at times when they were performing at their best. So, for you to not expect some decrease in performance from the team when you lose players that are performing at their best, I guess it's not realistic. But we've had other guys come in and pick up the slack too. I don't know. I feel a good energy around the club overall, and like I said, we're 40%, not even 40% of the way through the year. It's a long season, and I think we have the depth to keep chipping away at getting back to a record that better reflects what I think the quality of the team is, and I'm excited about that.
That's the perfect way to end it. Thank you, Lorenzo, for coming on.
It was
a great time.
Happy to do it.
Subscribe on Fish Traps on YouTube, Twitter, and everywhere else on the website. We'll see you guys on the next one.